here. Share that. Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under the hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. All right, what's good? What's good, YouTube? Welcome to a surprise live stream with the great and fantastic Joe Rupe himself, Hermetic magician, alchemist, astral traveler, one of the most interesting people I personally know, and really excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Joe.
What's up, brother? Thanks for the introduction.
Hell
That
yeah,
was that was
dude.
a that was a good introduction. I like it.
I've, I've been practicing my hosting skills at open mics, so hopefully it carries over. Yeah, dude, it's good to
Yeah,
have you.
brother. Yeah, it's good to be back. I feel like a blue collar mystic here lately. I've been doing a lot of blue collar jobs on the side. So, you
Dude,
know,
if anybody's a blue collar mystic, bro, it's you for sure. Like I have the title. I'm trying to work my way up to white collar wizard. That's it's a little
yeah.
further up the pyramid, I think, but we're where we're at. But I think you and I have so much in common as far as how we approach spirituality and what our goals are, and I always love to connect and chat with you. It's awesome.
Yeah, me too, man. I've come a long way too. Of understanding what the magician archetype is really all about. Um, we can get into that. But yeah,
I
for sure.
would love to. Yeah, the magician archetype, and we talked a little bit on the phone the other day about the devil and darkness and sort of what that means. And you kind of blew my mind talking about that stuff because I've really compartmentalized, that. And you get into spirituality, and you're like, I'm a light worker. I'm a grid genie or whatever it is. And it's like everybody just not everybody, but a lot of people just sort of associate the devil as just evil. And I think there's definitely some nuance to be explored, especially through the tarot and hermetics. I'd love to hear you share a little bit about that as well as the magician archetype.
Well, yeah, so there's Robert Moore used to do these presentations. He's an old Jungian analyst doctor, but he's passed away now, but he made a lot of sense to me about uh what divine masculinity is, or let's call it mature or initiated masculinity. And there's archetypes inside a masculine person. You were born with it as a guy. It just depends on where you end up. But you want to try to balance all of them. And it's not to perfect yourself, it's to authenticate yourself, you know. So let's get that clear because it seems like we're always trying to be this perfect thing, and for who, right? Like you were born perfect, as in transurfing talks about, you were born perfect. Like, so you have the magician, the lover, the king, right? And what's the other one? The warrior, right? That's what you have, those archetypes. And that's really those four archetypal energies will help you in every aspect of your life as a man. But when things kind of slip up, usually you're in one more than the other, or you're in the dark side of one more than the other. And then there's the whole devil, the adversary to those energies that you really have to integrate in the long run.
Yeah, man, I love that. First of all, I just want to touch on the fact that, like, yeah, you don't need to change, right? Like I believe we need to develop, right? Like, because if we
Hmm.
don't develop, we degrade, but we don't need to change. It's not about changing, it's about becoming your most authentic and really leading with the qualities that are your strongest, characteristics. And then from there, I love this idea: king, warrior, magician, lover, and the masculine. And we kind of talked a little bit about how we may have similar and also different, I would say, proclivities when it comes to
Yeah.
some of these archetypes, and kind of what we're working on. And so to kind of bring it into the devil's world, the idea of the devil is resistance, right? Like, it's like we, or a lot of people can sometimes throw this idea of the devil as this, oh, it's that this is terrible, it's bad, it's evil, yada yada yada. But it's like, if you don't have weights to lift at the gym, there's no resistance, there's no way for you to grow muscles. So if we don't have challenges, if we don't have some sort of adversarial force, quote unquote, against us, then we can't grow, we can't develop, we can't mature, we can't bring these energies in, because we won't make any progress, or have any growth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good way to look at it too. I think in the occult world, and more in the hermetic world, the devil. The, so what you're talking about would be more like Saturnian energy, or the gods, or the archetypes of Saturn, right? And those things make up the physical world. Like, here's the thing about natural law: you first, you if whether you have knowledge of natural law or not, you're subject to it. It doesn't matter, right? You live within the confines of natural law, whether you like it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. That's like a Saturnian type thing. The devil is the adversary, the tempter, but also the thing that, when you get deeper into it, is the fire that burns inside you, that gets you moving towards the things that you want, right? And so as long as you look at this archetype as a separate entity that's coming against you all the time, at some point you'll have to do the Jesus thing and be like, look, man, you can't tempt God. I don't need all these things. If I want them, I'll have them, right? At some point you have to integrate that fire in you. Otherwise, he's always messing with your mind and getting you to focus on your desires 24/7, and it ends up burning you up, you know. Or you sit there and you do nothing, and then the energy consumes you.
Mm.
It's kind of what the devil card kind of shows.
Man, that's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I can very much relate to that. I can feel, I've been in both of those scenarios.
Yeah, me too. Right? Yeah, yeah.
Quite a bit. They're
Yeah.
both very real to me. So, as far as like incorporating it instead of, I would say fighting against it, what does that sort of look like as far as like, bringing that into our world in a healthier way?
Well, I guess bringing it, because I've done all of the above, man. I've done the chaos magic rituals, the crossroad stuff. Like, I've played with the devil a lot, honestly, and I've realized how the devil has hurt my life. That energy. When I say the devil, I mean the energy, right? How it's hurt my life, but I've also realized how it's helped me achieve the things that I want in my life. And it boils down to things that are uncomfortable for some people to talk about, but biologically, the energy that's inside of us, we have both masculine and feminine energies inside of us, but there is a masculine and a feminine, an alpha and omega. We talk about this all the time. So really, this energy, that driving energy that's trying to go into the egg, let's look at it that way, whether it's metaphorical, whether it's in your life, whether it's physically, right? And sexually, that driving force underneath is that devil energy. Without that energy, you would do nothing. You'd be a vegetable. You'd do nothing.
Hmm.
Nothing. You would have no passion, no desire, no anything. So it kind of rules that energy. So when you come in contact with it, you're really looking in a mirror. And most of the archetypes that you run into, whether they're good or evil, you're always looking in the mirror once you finally realize what's going on. You know, I know I don't want to sound Crowleyan, but it's true.
Well, everything's on the table here as far as all that goes. Like, I'm not personally myself. I don't really know much about Crowley. if I'm honest. I mean, I know the quotes and stuff like
Sure.
they
Yeah.
get thrown around all the time and are super cliche and probably misinterpreted and misconstrued. And, any, I would say any magical system or anything that's folklore is going to be exaggerated anyway. I mean, that's just the nature of it. All the Sufis talk about like, all these different people. And there's even a great story of this guy who goes off, and while he's gone, they make all these great stories about him and what a magical person he is. And when he comes back, he's like, I'm actually like just like you guys. I haven't done any of those things that you said I did. And then they crucify him. So
Right.
pretty classic,
And hey,
reaction.
and listen, that's what happens in your life when you use those energies and you try to authenticate it things and people, and you'll think it's that person, but it's just an energy that's coming through to devour you, right? Like it wants to burn you up. I'll give you an example, and this has happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to other people too. So let's say you're on your path, you're on your mission, you don't even know that about this fire energy, you're losing yourself in this passion and desire. You're just going for everything that you want, which is a kind of a masculine thing. We've been doing it since we were boys, right?
Yep.
Like, boys have to be tamed because we're always just doing whatever the hell we want to do, you know. So, but you get later on in life and you start doing that. Then, as a man, and I'm just talking about the physical thing, you start, doesn't matter your status. If you harness or you're in, let's say, this frequency, the feminine energy will start to come into your life. Now, that could mean anything. It could mean your creations, but a lot of times it's people, relationships, friends, things like that. So it'll start to try to encapsulate what you're doing. And then when the devil really shows its head, now think about the seed going into the egg. It tries to encapsulate, use that energy for its own creative purposes, right? That's what feminine energy does. So once you start to do that, then the devil will come out. And I literally had a person tell me that I needed to knock you down a peg or two. And now at the time I was staring into the devil, but also the mirror, right? But in my mind, I thought, this person's messed up, right? Like, why would they want to hurt me? I'm happy. I'm achieving what I want. I'm doing what I want. But if you think about any time you authenticate, anytime you become who you truly are, there's always going to be energetic forces that are like what I guess you could say Transurban calls pendulums. Things
Mm-hmm.
that are going to try to like wad you up and keep you from being born again. It doesn't want you to transform into that thing because first I have no idea why. Some people say, well, it reminds them of their failures or whatever. But you're probably triggering people as the more you authenticate, you're triggering the inauthenticity in other people.
Hmm.
And so you either succumb to the pendulums, which I did
Oh, we all
because I
have.
did,
Let's,
you
yeah.
succumb to the pendulums, you lose the magician archetype, right? Because now you're worried about the lover. You moved all the way into the lover, which I did, hoping to please because I'm all about the pleasing. And so when you go into right, you know what I mean? Right.
Yep.
So when you go into
Yep.
one archetype or the other and you stay there, you're messing up, right? You should always remember the king archetype in your life. The warrior got you there. The magician helped to manifest things. The king makes sure that it all happens, but also that it happens for the good of everyone. And when you're in all of those kind of four, and they correspond right along with the elements too, all right, in magic. But when you're in correspondence with these energies, like it's hard to stop you. And it's almost like that Joseph story in the Bible where you can't lose no matter what people do to you.
Hmm.
And I know we've all met those kind of people. It's like, damn, it just seems like all they do is win, no matter who comes against them.
Right.
They figured these energies out, man. It's more of like I don't think it's a secret they're not telling people. Maybe they just are balanced. Maybe, who knows? But they figured these energies out. And you can test them on all levels: lover, magician, warrior, king, right? And I mean, let's say, for instance, king, right? You know something's wrong, but your desires are burning you up. You want it anyways. I did that. I know something's against what I stand for, but you know, I finally like I finally manifested this thing that I really wanted, and I gotta encapsulate it. Now I'm into my feminine. I gotta hold it and lock it down, and I've got to turn it into something that I want, you know. But I did like go against things that I didn't stand for. I
Mhm.
lost the king. The warrior threw up his hands and was like, "What the hell were we fighting for?" The magician's like, "Well, where did you go?" You see what I'm saying? Like it's every time everything for me as a hermeticist always comes back to those elements, as above so below, and the things that I learn about these four elements that kind of equals the fifth, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I do know people who just naturally roll through life, and no matter what, it does seem like
They
things
just
just
win.
it just unfolds for them in this perfect manner where you're like, why do you always land on your feet? That's crazy, you know.
Hmm.
But I can see that, and when you're talking about the pendulums, right? Like, it's these energies that try to like just knock us off balance. And if we start to get off balance a little bit, it's easy to continue down that direction. So we
Yeah.
want to basically insulate ourselves, and stay true to what, in transurfing terms, we would call your credo or your constitution. And I think that's really the big thing that you're talking about too, where it's like, oh, you have this thing come into your life and it feels good and it's exciting, but in order to get it, you have to break some part of your own um, e- ethical code or value set or whatever in order to bring it into your life. Now, if you do that, you sort of lose that momentum and you maybe even lose one of
You
those
lose yourself.
aspects of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you lose the idea that, especially if you've came from a place in your life like I have where you say you were raised in negativity or raised in the not an abundant mindset, not the mindset that like Transurfing talks about how much energy there is. Like you've always been coming from this place of lack, and a lot of us have. So when we do and we manifest something remotely good in our life, we're not thinking about, well, how much better can it get than this, right? Where do I go from here? It's like, oh, I finally got the thing. Hurry up and let's do damage control. Let's make sure that thing is happy, that person, this job, this whatever. Let's just focus on that thing because it's so amazing. But we don't really truly know how amazing what life has to offer us on an amazing level. We just put our foot in the water. We're just starting to get it to work. And so let's say if you came from a place of abundance your whole life, when you got that thing, it would be normal. You wouldn't change anything. So I think a lot of times that's what they say, well, you're just human, right? And we are. We're just human. So we learn from these mistakes and we move on. And so when people challenge you, me, or anybody and say, well, you claim to be this, like you claim to be, that's what people say, you claim to be a magician. How come you're not a millionaire? And I'm like,
Right, right,
you
right.
know nothing, absolutely nothing about magic. Nothing. Not the kind of
Oh,
magic I'm talking about. If you want to talk chaos magic, we can do that. I'm not, so I have to kind of like make sure that I say transcendental, or transformative hermetic magic because I used to just call it magic, right? But
well, dude,
I've
it's
learned my
so
lesson.
funny. Well, I have the same like people will I've had it happen several times where people will like call me out. They're like, "Oh, well, you're spiritual or like woke," like, and they make it a double standard where it's like you have to do what I think you should do because you
Uh,
claim to be spiritual. So you should
yeah.
do, this thing, that thing, or the other thing. You shouldn't have a backbone. You shouldn't have a spine. You shouldn't have, you know, any any boundaries whatsoever because you're spiritual and you're supposed to just lap it up, whatever it is. It's like, no, motherfucker, that is not how this works. You know,
Right.
I'm sorry
Yeah.
to tell you, but it's like I have something specific that I'm here to do and bring. And, you know, sometimes it's not going to be a smooth process. We all make mistakes. We are all human, and our successes come from the ruins of past failures. You have to allow yourself to make those mistakes. There's no other way to learn. As much as possible, it's nice. That's what mentors are for, and other books and ideas. It's like we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that's nice. but we still have to iterate, and we still have to find the way. We still have to find our path, and that's going to require some fuck ups along the way. It just is.
Oh
And that's
yeah.
okay. You have to be able to forgive yourself that and then continue to move on and be like, okay, cool. I got this far and I made a goof. It's going to happen. And no one else, it doesn't really matter what anyone else's opinion is anyway. It's like we have to be able to allow ourselves that grace and forgive ourselves and move forward and be like, okay, cool. This is a lesson. I can take this with me, because most of those people, if they're hating on you, they ain't doing shit. They're not on the path. They're not doing the work. They're hating on you. They're too busy. If somebody's doing the work, they don't have time to criticize
Don't
you.
have time to hate on people. Yeah. They
That's
spend
right.
most of their time like hating on others. There's this song by Gunship that's called When You Grow Up, Your Heart Dies, right? Don't Let Your Heart Die. I love that song by Gunship. And, after reading like the Transurfing book and listening to some of your audiobooks, I realized, you're more and more how I guess parallel everything is that we talk about, right?
Mhm.
You know, you're more formulaic, but you still have that magic, right? And I'm more magic, and sometimes I throw the formula in there. So I think you and I are like a left brain, right brain thing in a
Yeah.
sense, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, dude. For sure.
but when you grow up, your heart dies a little each time because like Transurfing talks about the pendulums. When you were born, and most people when they're born, the child inside them, man, they were happy. They had looked towards the future. Even when you messed up, even when people said, I don't like you, hurt your feelings, whatever, you still had all kinds of just fire inside you, which ends up turning into the devil when you get older. But you had the light inside you. You looked forward to things. Life was an adventure. You had time, you had all these things. When people get to midlife, they start thinking about, oh, well, how much time do I have? And they start focusing on, I've got to accomplish everything in the world that's going to make me happy. And by trying to, and I'm only talking about this, man, because I've done it, I do it, right? So they start trying to control everything, which doesn't allow for anything to manifest. I've got all these blocks and boundaries, and then I need to do all these formulas and control all of these things, right? And it's a balance, man. So the warrior is a balance. I'll give you an example like Robert Moore talks about. The warrior archetype is like, it's not always the guy with the sword. It is the guy with the sword that stands for what he believes in and will die for it. But he's also the guy that gets a pilot's license, flies an airplane, right? So at some point you can fly, you make a plan to fly that airplane. You have to check everything. And if you don't check everything, you could totally die, right? You have to do all these checks before you get in the air. And then once you get in the air, you have to let go, you know? And that's part of it, right? You do all your checks pre battle, and then you go. And that's all you do. Otherwise, we just sit there in the runway. That's like that warrior energy as well, too, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Yeah. And I mean, that's part of growth too. Like back to the taking new challenges, making mistakes. Like that's part of that training, right? It's a training
Hmm.
ground where we're learning and we're learning and we're learning, and that feedback, it comes however it comes, but I've been focusing really hard on the transurfing stuff, and some of the things that I've picked up recently have kind of blown my mind. That whole idea of like shoving your heart in a box and limiting it, kind of with the pendulums, what he talks about is that in our mind, like these pendulums, like they build up like plaque and they force our worldview to believe certain things. There's all these colloquialisms, especially if you're from the
Slides.
South, right? It's a dog eat dog world, blah, 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 whatever. And what happens is whatever the mind is certain of, the heart has to go along with. Masculine mind, feminine heart. So it's like if the mind is certain that it's going to be a tough day and that nothing ever comes easy and everybody's out to get me, then the heart will go along with that. And the key word here is certainty, right? Because over time, the mind just starts to believe certain things that may or may not be true. And the mirror will reflect whatever we project to it, as he says. But the reason why is because of the certainty of the mind and shoving that heart in a box. Like, this always happens to me. And there are people who just have terrible luck. And then there are people who have great fortune, like we were talking about earlier, who somehow seem to just flow through life so easy. Well, they have a belief. It's not even a belief, right? It's beyond a belief. It's a certainty that everything is just going to work out for them. And I know plenty of people like that, and it's just true all the time. Like, they just skate through life and they just fucking win all the time. And it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there. That's where you're talking about boxing in the heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk to people about exploring consciousness, I say the same things. It's key, it's cool to relax. We have to relax, we have to focus. But then people start asking, well, what about entities, or what about walk-ins? Or they start putting barriers in their conscious exploration too. And I've learned that the barriers, like, you can do guided conscious exploration to focus on an energy, but also that some of the barriers that you start telling your mind that are so certain, like, this is a matrix, prison system matrix. Well, when you go out of body, you might not even get to explore who you are at the very depths of yourself, because you're too busy fighting off demons in the quantum hologram matrix. You know what I mean? Like, we don't really know I think what it is we don't really understand how powerful our minds are until we start taking these explorations in consciousness, or we've had enough life experience to know, damn, I'm the one really doing all this stuff to
Mm-hmm.
myself. Yeah, I didn't. I mean, sometimes it takes a whole lifetime to get to know this stuff.
Well, I mean, it's not easily acquired knowledge, and especially like direct knowledge. So, I mean, I think that comes back to iteration and allowing ourselves to move forward and fail. It's okay. We get stuck every once in a while. It's like a video game in a sense, right? Like, because sometimes you get stuck on level 3. You
Yeah,
have to
right.
kind of keep replaying that over and over again. But once you
I
figure
can't get
out,
past that jump.
right,
Yeah,
exactly, right, like yeah, exactly. And then, but eventually you figure that out, and then you can move on. And I don't think that getting frustrated or upset or angry, is the way to handle, or the best way to handle that. Obviously a little bit of that can be motivating, right? Like, it's good to know what consequences there could be, but I feel like overall it's more important to encourage ourselves and really see things in the most positive light possible, because that's going to open up the most amount of possibilities and the awareness to be able to notice those possibilities when they come in. If you're just negative all the time, you've got your head down, you're going to miss so much. Whereas if you allow yourself to just be like, okay, cool, yeah, I made a mistake, okay, fine, like, it's good. I'm reframing everything as good, no matter what it is. Drop my phone, drop my keys, backed into a mailbox. Somehow it's good, and it might be good because it teaches me to be a little bit more careful backing out of the driveway. It might be good because it teaches me to be a little bit more cautious in a certain situation. It doesn't matter really what the reasoning is, but we have all these stories that we tell ourselves. And I think what really happens, what I've learned really from the transurfing stuff, is any negative thought is shoving you into the predetermined script. And it
yeah,
sounds so simple. It sounds so simple. Probably roll your eyes, whatever, bud. I get it, right? But it's so true. Fucking try it. Try it. It's really hard, first of all. Like, it's simple, but it's not easy. But try it. Try it and see what happens. And you start to become, instead of, because what happens is if you follow someone's descent down the downward spiral, right? They're completely being thought. They
oh
don't
yeah,
have thoughts of their own anymore. They're being thought, whatever it is, an entity, the world, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But, that person that's just completely yelling on the side of the street, they're schizophrenic. they're very unhealthy, whatever. Like they've descended so far into that script that they're being run, and that's what an NPC is. The opposite of the NPC is someone who wakes up in the movie and actually has the ability to make choices. But in order to be able to make choices, we have to unwire those already predetermined reactions that those pendulums and life has shoved our minds into. So there are these little thought markers, there are these little moments and these reactions that we've embedded into our psyche. I drop my phone. Ah, shit. Ah, damn it. Fuck. Ah,
Or that, you
ah.
know what, usually people follow up is that's just my luck, man. Or if it wasn't for shit luck, I wouldn't have any, you know.
Exactly. If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have no luck at all, right? Like
Yeah.
it's in the blues songs, it's everywhere. And so all of those thoughts and ideas, they're the script. They're the predetermined deterministic flow, and they just shove you into this like NPC state where you're being run. You're not even thinking for yourself. It's crazy. It's crazy, but if once you start to tinker with that and you pull that layer back, you start to see more of those like markers and more of those negative reactions that are sort of just like right, like embedded. And then the more you pull those back and pull those back and pull those back, the more the world begins to open up, the more you start to notice opportunity. And just from a practical perspective, right? If I'm walking down the street and you're walking down the street and I'm walking down the street like this, are you gonna feel any reason to approach me or talk to me or be nice to me or any of that? But if I'm like coming down the street and I'm in a good mood, I'm jovial, maybe I even say hi to you first. Like, what is going to happen in one scenario versus the other scenario? So simple, right? But it's like what the difference between those two approaches to life are, it's insane how
Yeah.
much that little tiny bit of a difference can make. I mean, if it's talking to the Terminix person on the phone and being nice to them and charming and kind and thoughtful, and then all of a sudden they're like, you actually have a credit. I think I can make it work to where the pest control is going to come and it won't cost you anything this time or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
this fortunate thing can play out. And and if you had a negative attitude, like everyone's always out to get me, it's a bill collector, whatever, well then that's going to be the case, and you're going to be putting out this energy to them that's not going to be very enticing or encouraging or make them want to help you in any way.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's totally true. I remember asking you about I'm specifically concerned about, and I know it's kind of bias, but I'm specifically concerned about the state of men, including myself, like cuz I'm a part of that group today, right? Like that they've given up on certain things. It seems like a lot of them have kicked the lover out the window, you know, almost given up on the magician, and they're sticking strictly to just warrior and kingship because that's the safe place to be. But it's really a sad thing. And to me, it's a massive societal pendulum, that's happening, right? It's not like one person, it's a social pendulum that's trying to get uh and man, it's just another thing. If you think about Jesus on the mount, when the devil comes and tempts Jesus, the devil energy, it's the same thing. It's just another temptation coming in saying, hey, if you do this thing, right, then I'll give you all this other stuff. If you lessen yourself,
Mhm.
if you act more fearful, more in a lack sense, then I will reward you with all of these things because that's the way things are.
If you go against your constitution, I'll give you a big bag of cash or whatever, right? Or
Mhm.
whatever the thing is on the other side of that. Yeah, let's break this down. I'm 100% with you. The state of men and masculinity is not in a great space. And I know just from my own experience and challenges and things that I've been working through and going through. Masculinity is not something that we're just born with inherently. Probably femininity either, but
Yeah.
I'm not nearly educated enough about that, nor do I have any experience with that in comparison to this. But when it comes down to, you hear a lot like, oh, the good guys never win, nice guys finish last, and all that kind of stuff. And
Well, there's a truth to that. Okay.
well,
Now, there
yeah.
is a little truth to that.
Well,
And there,
here's the distinction that I really think is important because there is a truth to that. Absolutely agree. But I think the way that people perceive of it on the surface is that the nice guy or the guy who, let's just say, has ethics or values,
no,
okay?
that's different. Yeah, no.
That is not that's not the same, right? So like you got the bad, let's call the bad boy over here. He plays by his own rules. He has his own values, and whatever those are, agree, disagree, you think they're bad or good, doesn't matter. He's not going to fold in order to get that back. Like the devil comes, the devil tempts him with like, oh, well, you could get this if you do X, Y, and Z. He's like, no, this is my code. This is my constitution. This is what I will allow and not allow in my reality. And what makes somebody a quote unquote nice guy is that they don't have the stick to itiveness to their own credo, to their own constitution. They will manipulate and they will bend in order to get that thing that they want. They
Right.
want this thing,
Yeah.
and so they will simp and become a bitch in order to get it, and they will break their own value set. So it's not about being a good guy or a bad guy, right? Like it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with having a very consistent um, set of codes, constitution, credo, values, whatever you want to call that. And if you don't know what your values are, then I encourage you to figure that out right as quick as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Like sit down right now and figure that out because I feel like those are mostly inherent. Like for most people, those sets of values are inherent. Everyone's are going to be different. Like I'm not going to sit here and judge somebody because they did X, Y, and Z. Because if that was on what they felt like they should do, then okay. As long as they're not hurting somebody else, I don't really have a huge problem with it, And that's another sort of story. But the idea of masculinity and the idea of this like good guy versus bad guy thing, it's not defined properly.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
There are people who stick to their standards and have fucking standards. That's the thing that makes me sick is guys that just don't have any fucking standards at all. It's disgusting. And it's repulsive. It's repulsive not just to me, but to women. I think a lot of people can pick up on that energy, and they'll just fold and go for whatever the low hanging fruit is, even if it doesn't match. It's like that's what's great about Jesus in that story being tempted by the devil, right? He's sticking to his standards. He's like, this is what I stand for and believe in, and I will not accept anything else except for this. That's what makes what I would say like a great man, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't bad boy, good guy. I don't, those are stupid. Those aren't covering the range. The whole
No,
idea
I
of a
mean, if
nice
you're
guy.
if you're an asshole to everybody, then you've lost the lover. You have to be all for to all people, right? That's the thing to yourself because all people are a version of you in the highest sense. So you have to be all for to all people. It's more of a passivity when people do everything to avoid confrontation. That's not the warrior. You don't go seeking it, but when something happens, when there's a right time for confrontation, you stand your ground. Like Christ with the money changers kind of thing, right? It wasn't just about it was about his credo, but when he walked into that scenario, into that room, everybody's kind of passive. Most people are passive. Well, this is just the way it is, right? That's not divine masculinity. It was repulsive in his heart, and so therefore he acted upon it. And so would, if you think about it, a child. If you do something in front of a boy child that's hurtful or whatever, they're going to do the same thing, right? It's just more in a controlled manner as a man. So when he went to the money changers, he starts flipping out, throwing tables, telling people, look what you've become. Look how you're exchanging yourselves, right? And I'm sure everybody's like, whoa, is this God in the flesh? Well, that's the same thing he told the devil. You can't tempt God. In other words, I'm God, just like you are God. And people don't want to hear that. They want to be like, no, I'm a sinner. I'm this and I'm that. And I'm all that. I'm none of that. And it's like, dude, you're a part of everything. Everything is everything. Like Transurfing says, you're a drop of the universe. You're not a
Right.
drop in the universe. So
Right. You're a
stop thinking
particle.
that the universe is like this thing that's like, well, if I do this formula, the universe is going to say, well, you did a good job and do what no, man, like you're a part of that universe and you live in a place that has natural law, and that's it,
Yep.
you
That's
know.
it. A particle of God, a child of God. However, we want to think of that. I love that. That's it. And it's like, and you're special and unique. I don't want to sound like a kindergarten teacher here too much, but
You're
like
so special. Yeah.
you're so special and unique. And but you
Yeah.
are truly like not, don't rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. You are one of one, a completely unique individual that has their own perspective, their own talents, everything that goes along with that. And that's what makes you that child of God, that particle of God. Like you deserve whatever it is that you want. You're programmed for it at a deep, when you authenticate, right? And really understand, it's like the mind might be like, well, I want to have a bajillion dollars and control everything. It's like, no, 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 that's all pendulum shit. But
Right.
like when you get down into the heart and really ask it what it wants, then that is programmed in a very specific individual way. So you authenticate that. It's like now we're manifesting, right? We're not going after what someone else wants or what society thinks we should have or what we think we should have in order to fucking impress this person or that person. We're literally being our most authentic selves. And we are that key that unlocks the door and goes directly to that goal that's completely special. It's a custom order. It's not the same generic bullshit, Betty Crocker on the counter kind of thing. It's something you got to go ask the cashier for, and they're like, oh yeah, actually this came in and it's addressed to you. Here you go, right? As opposed to whatever being a parody, being just like everybody else, fitting into society and coming from that place and like, I'm going to manifest a Maserati or whatever. It's like, well, if that's for you, great. You know what I mean? Like, then yeah, absolutely. But really, what manifestation is it's changing the image, not trying to manipulate the mirror, right? Like, if I want to trim my face, I don't shave the mirror.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah. Now you can put symbols in the mirror, and that's what a magician does, but it can put symbols in the mirror of the reality around you to help change the frequency, but it's only there for the purpose of either invoking or evoking a frequency change. That's all it is, right? You still have to do it yourself, you know. And sometimes when you get to a certain place, this is where the magician comes in, right? Like sometimes when you get to a certain place in life, let's say you get off balance, let's say you're totally in warrior mode, but you have this other part of your life that just isn't working out. You're in conflict all the time. Everybody's leaving you because they think you're an asshole. Well, maybe you neglected the lover archetype. Maybe you neglected the magician archetype. And it's all about balancing these four elements. And see, like Hermetics teaches you those elements on many levels, right? On many levels and what they mean and how they kind of fester out into reality. So, but as far as like the God and the devil thing, that is it. You know how I was telling you the other day, like there's sales guys, and these guys love sales and they crush it in sales and they make tons of money in sales. And if you get around them, they have a light in their eyes, you know. And back when I started sales doing, and I used to work in sales, people would literally tell me, man, like I see a light in your eyes. And at the time, I didn't know that it was that devil energy inside of me. And I don't mean that in a bad way,
Right.
but it did overtake me too. And, because I didn't know what it was. Because it's like this burning fire, and it burns and burns, and you can't, it's an all consuming thing. You can't have enough. You understand what I mean? Like you can't have enough. I got this thing. Now I want this thing. I got that thing. Now I want this thing. And
Hmm.
it's trying to consume you. And what we need to learn, I think, in just my opinion, but especially for me in my life, is when you have this energy to properly harness it, right? To properly harness it. And this is like one of the biggest occult secrets there is, you know. Don't go, how do I say this metaphorically without sounding dirty, right?
Sound dirty.
Don't go don't go trying to fill every hole in your life. See, I
Uh,
mean that on many levels, right?
right.
The king knows which battles are worth to send the warrior to. The king knows which queen is worth spending his time with.
Hmm.
You see what I mean? The magician knows how to keep the reality going, and as the wise man, the wise person, that's enough based on experience, study, and all this stuff to know how all this is working. And the lover, which I think is the most one of the most important. But if you stay in that thing too, things will get off balance. But in the lover, you know, that's when you give the love, right? When you decide, all right, this is where I plant my energy. This is where I plant my seed, physically, metaphorically, in life and everything, all of it. And I asked you if you've seen Return of the King, and you by Lord, Lord of the Rings. I love that movie, dude. Return of the King, but it's that's J.R.R. Tolkien showing you the magician archetype, the lover archetype, the warrior archetype, and the king. And the king returns actually transforms from the warrior into the king in that, especially Return of the King, because that's what it's about.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
lost his kingship and came back.
I think you see this too in the Bible with David and Solomon, right? Like
Yeah.
you see those as well as those archetypes and this process. And then what is that book, Iron John? Have you ever read that or heard of
No,
that
I don't think
book?
so.
Iron John is this old tale of the king's son who the king like captures this wild man, puts him in a cage, and so there's this ball that the kid's playing with. The ball goes into the cage. The wild man gets the ball, and then the child's like, "Hey, I can I get my ball back?" And the wild man's like, "If you let me out of the cage, then you can have your ball back." And he's like, "Well, I can't
Uh,
do that." You know what I mean? So the story goes that the kid has to find the key, which is underneath his mother's pillow. He has to steal the key from underneath his mother's pillow in order to let the wild man out. He lets the wild man out to get his ball back, but then he's like, "You got to take me with you because I'm going to get in trouble for stealing the key and doing this whole thing." So he goes out into the woods with the wild man. He winds up making a deal with the wild man that he won't, it's something about the river. I can't remember exactly, but he makes a deal with him that he won't like do X, Y, or Z, violates that agreement, and then has to go out into exile by himself. While
Makes
he's out
sense.
exile by himself, he becomes a man essentially. I mean, and then finds his queen and then goes back into the kingdom. So Return of the King, it's right there in that Iron John story too. Robert Bly, I think, wrote that book. I read it a few years ago, and it's a really, really good book as far as like masculinity, and I think it would fold into this idea of the four archetypes as well, and that development through those stages. I mean, does it start off like kind of, and this is like a range of growth through these four archetypes?
Yeah, I mean, if you take like the traditional old school ceremonial magic to alchemy to astrology kind of understanding, it does, right? Like you start out learning about the base elements, even down to the physical elements, right? You invoke them into your being, and these invocations cause you to, they actually force you to go through things that are going to balance yourself out. So all the while, if you're a well balanced guy or girl or whatever, like you should go through it fairly easy, but most people don't, and it just brings these things to the forefront. But also I think the coolest thing about magic, right? Mysticism, synchronicities, whatever you want to call them, the magical placebo of everything that happens in reality. The coolest thing that happens is whether you're starting to do chaos magic like sigil magic, or whether you get into transcendental magic and you make it a way of life. When you first start doing it, things really manifest, right? It really shows you that it's real. And as you go on, it's almost like trying to get that back. But the work is starting as you go on. And the reason why it really shows you that it's real is because that is you. That is the metaphysical higher you saying, "Hey, how you doing? I've been trying to talk to you your whole life. Finally, you know, finally we're talking. Let me show you something." So it kind of hooks you, and then now you're into doing the work. And if you get away from that conversation, that quote conversation, you'll things will slip, man. And trust me, you can even go into a void, a true void of nothingness. So when you start the work, you have to go through it. And that's like the transcendental side of magic, which even some chaos magicians don't agree with me. They're like, "Oh, that's unnecessary," and all. Well, it might be unnecessary if you're just a practical person and you're only worried about what you're gonna uh, get and receive while you're on this earth, right? As far as physical things and your way of life and all that stuff. But if you really want to explore who you are and explore your consciousness and who you really are and where you came from, all this stuff and what the mysteries and what you're about, you kind of got to do the old school stuff. It's been handed down for thousands of years. It's never changed. It's a process that you go through, but you don't have to do that. Honestly, you're going to do it anyways, right? So you either become the magician or you're controlled by magic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've experienced a lot of these different, I guess, stages in my own development, and I think as we're learning to navigate them, we're not necessarily always in balance with each one. It's like, as you maybe step into the
It's
warrior,
hard.
right? You're gonna make some mistakes. You're gonna break some eggs, so to speak, and maybe kind of fuck some shit up here or there. But that's all part of that development. That's all part of that growth. Back again to you have to allow yourself to make mistakes. You have to. You have to be okay with that and give yourself a little bit of grace as you grow, like we are human. And yeah, while you're spiritual, that doesn't mean perfect. That doesn't mean you're just going to nail it off the rip.
No, it's no, no. Yeah.
No, no,
So,
no.
so I remember one time in Daytona Beach, I'll talk about this. Well, I'll talk about this with you. Like I thought that I had slipped into the lover archetype so much, and I started watching these videos. Like you're a bitch, you're a beta, blah, da, 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 right? And I'm like, bitch and beta. I started thinking that ain't me because I grew up, playing contact sports, fighting, whatever. And so I was so out of balance that I literally went out with my buddies, drank some beers, and picked a bar fight, got in a fight. One of my friends ended up going to jail, you know, and things could have went downhill but they didn't. Thankfully, like I started to rebalance myself again, but it was like one archetype had gotten so out of balance inside of me that I had to make sure the other one was still there. And see, this is what we do. And then we start destroying our lives. And then when everything goes to shit, then we go, man, the government did it to me, man. It's the system. It's the system. The pendulums are going, ha, 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 ha. Like there's
Hmm.
like, that's what
Thanks
you're
for the
supposed to
energy.
do is fall apart,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No,
and submit.
no, that's really, really good. Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I love it. I think that's really, really good. I want to explore these archetypes more. I really would like to kind of know more about each one of them to kind of like, categorize them and kind of feel through them. Because like we can sit here and talk about all this stuff, and that's great. And
Sure.
having a conscious awareness of it is fantastic. But what I've really learned through this last book club that we're doing as we're going through this reality transferring book is that it's really I've intellectualized this stuff so much, right? And I could make 1,000 videos on this shit. Like I know it pretty well, um, at a conscious mind level. But it's not about the conscious mind level. It's about getting it into the system,
Yeah.
feeling it, experiencing it, and absolutely like having that true knowledge that's like in side.
Yeah,
So
that's wisdom, right?
yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
on the tree of life, that's wisdom, right? You've been on the one side where it's understanding,
Yeah.
understanding, understanding.
Oh,
Wisdom is I know because I've done it, you know. I
yeah.
know because I've been there, right? Like, so back to real. I want to make a point about that previous story. It wasn't that I was so into the lover like passionate, like the romantic lover like passionately. It's that what happens when you get into relationships is the whole love and fear paradigm starts pouncing back and forth inside you, and it brings up old wounds. Okay. Childhood wounds, things like that, Jungian problems you need to take care of. And it's supposed to do that. See, I didn't know it was supposed to do that. I thought that I had a problem. Why am I crying? Only bitches cry. I'm not man enough because I've got tears. But really, processing emotion is a balance in itself, too. So I let the outside world tell me who I was, which is inauthentic. And now I got to go be man enough. So I got to go slap a guy in the face at a bar and win a fight, or I'm not a man. Drunk, by the way. And you see this happening all the time, whether it's drugs or someone goes and does something stupid or someone does something impulsive or, something is out of balance. And you have to be the lover to everybody, not just your partner, to everything and everybody. That way, when you get into kingship, you understand the decisions I make are for the good of everybody's heart and their life,
Right.
right? Um, and you have to have that credo inside you in order to instill to make sure when you make those decisions, it's for the good of everybody and that you harm no one.
Hmm.
Right. So that whole nice guy thing, I got to be the badass bad boy. Most of those dudes, I don't care how chiseled they are little bitty babies on the inside that don't know how to handle it.
That's exactly right. And there's nothing funnier than seeing some like super jacked fucking Chad just
Shower.
be a
Right.
total simp. You know what I'm
Hey,
saying?
I've done
Like,
it too, man. I get it.
hey, listen, I
I
can
get
laugh
it.
because I've been there, right? It's like
Yeah,
I can
yeah, yeah.
watch Whitewater Carnage and laugh my ass off because I've flipped at Iron Ring. You know what I'm saying? Like I can
Yeah.
watch. I am not judging, but I have started to, like as you say, like begin that understanding and into wisdom process and start to implement this. So definitely something I
Yeah.
think we can have another conversation about because I want to learn more about what you've put together and
It's
maybe
all, yeah. It's all about, and I'll get in. I want to get into this more with you than like not on the. I mean, I am going to talk about it on my show eventually, but I get for a separate thing. But I really want to get into it more with you. Like, first you meet the devil, then you recognize who the devil really is, and then you integrate that son of a bitch.
yeah, integrating the devil. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it doesn't mean you've become some evil bastard.
No.
All it means is I understand this archetype, this energy, and I understand the mirror that's happening now.
And I can use it, right? And
Yeah,
so like now I appreciate the resistance, the challenge, the growth instead of despising it, right?
yeah,
Like I think that's a big part of that integration is being like, yeah, that's why I'm like, it's good. It's good. I back my car into a mailbox. It's good. This is a challenge. This helps me grow. This helps me learn. This helps me integrate and put that um, wisdom into my body as opposed to it just being this cerebral understanding. Yeah, I know all the words and all the vernacular, there's words and vernacular. That's cool. It's getting into the system, slowly getting in there, but I want to really infuse it and I want to help people to make this stuff automatic, like second nature, like the opposite is. It's really second nature for us to be script characters. We don't even notice it. We think we're awake. It's hilarious. And then, once we can figure this out and start to put these abilities and understandings into our system and make it wisdom, then all of a sudden the world completely opens up. Now
yeah.
opportunities that otherwise were they might have been there the whole time, but you just couldn't see it. So yeah, I would love to. Let's do that. Let's table this. I know you got your show coming up here in a few minutes. It's a great spot to kind of hop off because like
Just
I'm
tease them with the devil.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. But let's do it. Let's set it up in the next, couple weeks or whenever we both can. We'll chat off air and put another one of these together and yeah, go a little bit deeper into these archetypes. I'd love that.
Yeah, man, it was good to come back on here because I feel at home with the blue collar mystics. I mean, you see the 5 gallon buckets back here, right? So
It just looks like a astral field to me. I don't know.
you don't see the edge of the 5 gallon bucket. So
Oh, I
I've
see
got to
one.
go to
I see
yeah,
one.
I've got
Yeah,
some
man.
construction work I got to do tomorrow,
Well,
actually.
dude,
So
like I said, dude, you are a true blue collar mystic. And I consider really the reason why I call the podcast Blue Collar Mystics plural is because like we're all looking for practical ways to level up and to understand this stuff. So I think anybody who's part of this group or part of this, infrastructure or whatever is certainly a blue collar mystic because we're not out there, you know, doing all this crazy ass woo woo shit for.
no, we're just trying to figure stuff out and make it happen, man.
Right. We're trying to practically implement, and I'm all for some of the mystical stuff, like all of the mystical stuff. But if there's no use to it, like what are we doing? We're just
Yeah. Yeah.
we're just
I
spinning
mean, yeah,
wheels.
there's a use to it. You just have to like put it into practice, but I would say this when you like the last thing I'll say is do your thing, okay?
Yeah.
Like if you do let's say a ceremony every day, you go out and you go try to achieve what matters to you and your heart and you live the way what matters to you and your heart, then nothing else matters. Not what people say, well, you didn't manifest this, you don't look like that, you don't talk this way, or you should have did this with your life. The only thing that matters is what you think about it. That's it. That's it.
Yep.
And
I think we'll
the devil will try to keep you from knowing that, actually.
Yep. I love it. I think we leave it there. Thank you so much, dude, for hanging out with me for a minute. And folks, if you're on this live stream, Joe's got a show coming up here in just a few minutes. Go and check out Joe's show. Go and check it out. Where can they check it out, Joe?
Just lighting the void on YouTube. I've been working all day, so it's going to be one of those crazy nights where I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. But I love broadcasting, and I love my community, like all the void walkers, man. They're fucking awesome people, so it's fun too.
Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, you got an awesome crew. They're all vibrant in the chat. Thanks to everybody for coming and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. It's been a really fun little quick show and awesome to jump in. Appreciate everybody for kicking it with us. Thanks so much. Make sure to check out Joe's show coming up here in just about 5 minutes, Lighting the Void here on
Maybe,
YouTube. Talk about a tease.
yeah,
And I got some
maybe
videos coming
ten
out.
minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. I got some videos coming out this week. So if you guys be on the lookout for that. I'm getting a little bit fiery. It's getting a little feisty over here in my side of the world. So much, much love. And I hope to inspire you guys and challenge you to step out and to start implementing this stuff and trying it and fuck up, make mistakes. It's good. It's good for you. It'll make you better. That's the only way to learn. So, yeah, much love, everybody. Much, much,
love you,
much.
brother.
I love you too, dude. Peace to everybody out there and we will continue this conversation very, very soon. Have a wonderful night.